Compromise is the optimum way to resolve conflict in your workplace. But how do you introduce the concept of compromise if everybody around you is stubborn and bullheaded? And maybe this includes you too. It's really important. It's a skill and you've got to know how to have it. It'll make your life a lot easier. I promise it'll bring your stress down at work. It'll help enrich your team and it'll help make you more successful. And that's what we want. Stick around as the topic of today's episode.
Guild coaching, more success, less stress.
Usually when people don't want to introduce compromise, it's either because they're afraid because of other really strong personalities and behaviors in their office place, or it's because they're too stubborn and bullheaded to give in. Well, neither one of those things is going to cut it. So today I am telling you how you can introduce compromise in your workplace, no matter who is the stubborn, bullheaded person, or maybe it's everybody. The first thing that you have to remember is that we drop a major life skill after we leave about kindergarten, and this major life skill is curiosity. When people are disagreeing and they think that things should be done a different way and nobody's compromising and that's not even a near thought in their hemisphere, they are really just grasping onto the thought that they're correct and they're holding on so tightly that they're not open to considering anything else. So take a breath. I always say that, right? I always say take a breath. Take a breath and just ask yourself one question. What is that person's reason or motivation for thinking something different than me? Don't be snarky or ugly about it if you don't like the person and you're like, well, it's because he's stupid and I know the right way. Ask yourself, really ask yourself that question. Be curious about why the other person got to that conclusion. You always have something to learn. And if you don't have something to learn, which you always do, if you don't think you have something to learn, then maybe you have something to teach. And only by opening up and being curious, being flexible, being able to have a conversation with a cool head, will you either be able to be taught or be the teacher. That is what team building is all about. So number one in compromise, take a breath and engage your curiosity. I love watching little babies. Everything in the world is new to them. They are curiosity in human form, but we lose that and it's really at a great disservice to us. I challenge you to employ curiosity across your life, in your home, in your office, everywhere, on the street. I wonder why that person just talked to me. I have no idea. If you employ curiosity, it immediately diffuses your stress level. And I guarantee if you really do employ this skill that we shouldn't drop after kindergarten, if you really do employ this skill, it's going to skyrocket your success in all of your relationships. And the reason is curiosity brings questions. And when you ask people questions, it means that you actually care what they think. And when you actually care what they think, it feels good to them. And then they want to share with you. And then they want to know what you think. And then you share back. And doesn't that sound nice? So try curiosity. I promise it'll work. If the situation is too heated and you can't have a conversation and employ that wonderful skill of curiosity, step away. One of the ways to engage people in compromise is to allow them the time to actually process everything that's going on. It is perfectly fine to say, okay, we're disagreeing at this moment, but why don't we each get a full understanding of the other person's perspective and then just take a break, chew on it for a bit, noodle it, and then come back and discuss later. That will give you time to formulate your reasons why you're so right. It'll also give you time to consider their reasons and maybe find a third alternative, another perspective altogether. Time is always a good thing when you have a disagreement or a heated discussion going on. Be open to listening. When you are open to listening, others will be more open to listening to you. You don't have to talk all the time. Somebody told me, well, I've heard this several times, that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that you'll listen twice as much as you speak. It's really important to remind ourselves of that. So if you're open to listening, it kind of goes with that taking more time thing. I realize all discussions may not lend themselves to long periods of decision making, but those emergencies that need snap judgments are few and far between, and usually a boss will just say, nope, this way, and then you're out of there. So most of the time, when you need to slow down and introduce compromise, you have time to listen and show that you care. So use your ears. Employ some language of understanding. When you're in a discussion, a lot of times people will begin the sentences with the word you. That is the number one way to start an argument. Start your sentences with the word I, so you're constantly bringing things back in. Even if you've been verbally attacked by someone. You yelled at me. How about, I felt very wounded when you raised your voice at me. See how that just changed it? And when I bring it in and make it about myself, my delivery is softer. I was very hurt when you yelled at me. I can even say it with more inflection, and it's still not as offensive as, you yelled at me and that sucked. See the difference? It's night and day. It's glass half full, glass half empty. It's you know, you're saying the same thing, got the same amount of water in the glass, but it's just a different perspective on it, and it softens it a lot. You can also use a phrase of understanding, like, Henry, I know that we were both way past lunch and we're probably hungry earlier, and let's just restart this in a little while and maybe get a full grasp of what the other person's saying. Is that okay? You're building an understanding. You're kind of making an excuse for both of you. You're not just saying, hey, I know that you were hangry, so let's talk about this later when you're not being such a jerk. You're saying we. And even if you just had a granola bar before the meeting and you know that wasn't true, you know, that wasn't a full lunch. Let's just let that slide. Let the other person off the hook just a little bit with a phrase of understanding. This is a great conversational tactic, whether it's about compromise or not. Repeat back to the other person what you interpreted them to have said. You're going to repeat back to them what you believe you understood them to try to communicate to you. So much of disagreements and discussions happen because when you say something, I may not interpret it properly. And so this way, if you can recount to the person, if I may I just repeat back to you what I'm understanding that you're saying to make sure that I have it right? Wow, really? You care about me enough that you want to pause and repeat back to me my own words? Number one, people love hearing themselves quoted. Number two, you were listening. And if you have it wrong, the person's going to say, no, that's not exactly what I meant. And then they're going to clarify. Everything goes up from there because you have a greater understanding of what they were actually saying, and they know that you are actively listening. You can always pause and do that. And then that also builds in a little bit of extra time for you to think about something that you want to say. That also brings up another point. Listen to people's sentences fully. If you have a problem with hearing half of a sentence and then already starting to formulate your next thought, stop that. Bring a pen and paper, tell the person, hey, I want to make sure that I hear you out fully. I'm going to write down notes if I have any comments that I want to repeat back. And so if you see me writing, that's what I'm doing. I'm not being rude. Let them know what you're doing. You're telling them, I want to hear you. I want to listen. I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to make sure that I don't forget my thought if there's a response that I have to something. So I'm just going to write it down. Many times, disagreements and arguments and lack of ability to compromise comes from the fact that when one person is speaking, as soon as this person hears half of it, they're like, ooh, I know what I'm going to say to that, and then they stop listening. And so they've only gotten half, if that, of the message, and that really escalates arguments. So no compromises are going to happen in a room with people who are practicing that poor listening tactic. And finally, a few phrases that might help you to introduce compromise. Here they are. You can say, here's how I understand you see the issue, and here's how I see the issue. Can we see where we can come together on this? And another, Since we don't agree why this happened, can we lay out the facts and then come up with a solution that we can both live with? Or you can say, I really want to hear your full viewpoint. Can we each state our viewpoints and then see if there's any common ground? And you can also just point out the obvious. Hey, we need to resolve this somehow. So what would be the best way to do that as far as you're concerned? Should we take a break and come back to this tomorrow? Or what do you think? Asking the other person to put in his or her opinion will really help them see that you're not just trying to stand there just cemented with your feet just not moving anywhere, that you're not flexible at all. It'll show them that you're willing to bend and that you can be soft as well. I hope that these solutions to bring compromise into your disagreements serve you well. Before you leave, click the subscribe button and that little bell. That's a notification that'll just let you know the next time that we upload a video to help you live your life with more success and lower stress. Also, always check out the description of the video because I put little nuggets and freebies down there for you, so you don't want to miss out on that. See you next time.